Candidate Parga, court backlog is a growing issue. What are your thoughts on how to manage and streamline some of the process?
So I think that holding attorneys accountable is one way to streamline that process, but there's also the issue of waiting for those reports or labs which are outside of the control of the attorneys. So as the judge, you are trying to keep the case moving forward. But when there are important pieces of discovery that are needed, that's sometimes outside of the control of the lawyers or even the judge at that point. Having been in private practice for the large bulk of time before I became a judge, I also understand that it is important to be mindful of the fact that attorneys need an opportunity to negotiate. They need an opportunity to gather mitigation for their lawyers, or on the state side, that they need an opportunity to speak with their victims. So it is a matter of trying to balance moving the case along with being fair and just at the same time.
Candidate Clement, same question.
We had an issue it had to do with the jail, and I'll address it in terms of the jail. A backlog of cases that were 1, 2, or 3 years old or older in our county jail, and this was prior to the implementation of the Safety Act. And the first thing I said to the chief judge when he pointed out that he had all these statistics, I said that this is the judge's fault. It's the judge's fault that we let these cases get this old. So we implemented procedures, each in our own courtrooms, to move these cases, and the way to move these cases is to set them for trial because they have that end date then, and we have all but eliminated that backlog. I do not think there is anybody who is fit to stand trial. I think there's one person unfit to stand trial who's been in more than 3 years, yes. But we've eliminated the backlog of 2-year-old cases and 3-year-old cases. A felony case, it's more than a year old. If it's a first-degree murder case, that's not an old case. And we recognize that. But the judges are the ones that have to eliminate that backlog with the considerations that Judge Parga spoke about.
Candidate Clement, do you believe there are areas of law that require reform, particularly in sentencing practices? If so, which areas and why?
With respect to sentences, there are laws that have mandatory minimums that sometimes, and add-ons, mandatory add-ons. For instance, if someone is sentenced to 25 years in a case and there's a mandatory add-on of another 20 years, then the minimum in the case is 45 years. So there needs to be, I think, more discretion in the courts with those mandatory sentences. And the reason I say that is that, as I said earlier, I think no two cases are alike and no two defendants are alike. And to treat everybody with the cookie cutter mandatory sentencing is sometimes unfair. They have changed that with respect to people who are under the age of 18 and charged as adults. But for many, that creates a real inequity in the sentencing process.
Candidate Parga?
I would agree. I think that where we have laws that take discretion away from the judge to consider the individual facts of the person who's standing before the judge for sentencing, for example, is a place that would benefit from reform. Because no two cases are alike, because no two situations are alike, it's very important to give the judge an opportunity to take into account all of the different personal factors involved in that case, and mandatory minimum sentences take that away from the judge and does treat everyone the same based simply on the charge.
Candidate Parga, what do you believe are the biggest barriers to accessing justice in today's legal system? How can the judiciary play a role in addressing these?
So some of the biggest issues to access to justice is language access in our courtrooms, and that's a project that I've worked on since I've been on the bench and very passionate about, making sure that in our courtrooms here in Kane County we are using, whether it's language or sign language interpreters that are registered and certified, because there was a time in our county when we did not use registered or certified interpreters, and that really resulted in people not knowing what was happening with their cases. It resulted in them not getting correct information. And so when I did take the bench, that was one of the projects I really wanted to work on, and we were able to change that policy in Kane County so that now we only use interpreters that are certified and registered, and subsequently are reimbursed 100% for the use of those interpreters.
Candidate Clement.
The project that Judge Parga was part of that changed the interpreter system is one of the best changes I've seen in the 30 years I've worked in Kane County, either as the public defender or as a judge. That was, I think, the biggest barrier, but it remains a barrier. There are an insufficient number of interpreters, which is no one's fault, I think, except budgets and market. There's also, I think, a number of attorneys who speak the language and get the clients, but aren't really qualified to be doing the work. And I've had examples of that in my courtroom, which has created problems down the road for the defendant and the court system. We have to do things twice. So I think there's a lack of legal resources available to people who have language barriers, and I think that creates an inequity in the system for them.
Thank you. And this will be our last question. Candidate Clement, how do you ensure ethical conduct, how do you ensure ethical conduct within the courtroom and among those who work under your supervision?
I believe that the expectations in my courtroom are clear. You lead by example, you act ethically. The people in front of you act ethically. If you treat people with respect, even the most unruly defendants who sometimes come in front of me act respectfully. There are, of course, exceptions. The lawyers, pretty much across the board, are very ethical, do their jobs very well. My staff, who none of them work for me, they're deputy clerks, court reporters, they all act very ethically, and the problem defendants we have once in a while, ultimately you have the power of contempt of court, which I use very, very rarely.
Candidate Parga.
I think it is the job of the judge to make sure that we set a good example and that we lead by example in our courtrooms, so that if we treat people with respect and kindness, our clerks, our bailiffs will do the same. And that if we become aware that someone is not being treated with respect and kindness, that we bring it to their attention as the leader in that courtroom. So I think that maintaining ethics in the courtroom begins and ends with us in how we comport ourselves, the conversations that we have with the lawyers, making sure that we aren't having conversations about any cases when the case isn't before the bench. And part of that is excusing ourselves when we are done with our court call so that we don't inadvertently become part of just regular conversations that happen in the courtroom.
It is now time for closing statements. So Candidate Parga, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and I just want to humbly ask you for your support and your vote in November. I very much believe in serving the community, and that's why I am running for this job. I have worked on many projects in the court system to make access to justice more of a reality for the litigants who come into our courtroom. From the interpretation project that I worked on, to training new judges to speak plainly to those litigants who come into the courtroom, to serving as faculty for different classes. I don't believe in just coming into the courtroom, doing my job, and going home. I believe in always looking to see how I can make that courtroom better for others. Outside of the courtroom, I live my life the same way. Service is at the root of everything that I do, from volunteering at Lazarus House to other organizations, again, to make our community a better place to live. And that's what I would do, is serve our litigants here to make our justice system best for them.
Candidate Clement, you have 1 minute.
I would also like to thank the League for doing this and for everyone who came here. I have, since 1994, worked in public service as a public defender for 16 years and as a judge now for going on 14 years. So my career essentially has been one of public service. As a circuit judge, you are a leader in our court system, and as public defender and even as an associate judge now, I have been a leader among my peers, and certainly I was a leader of the Public Defender's Office for all of those years. I have those proven leadership skills that are necessary as a circuit judge. I've served on committees regarding the reopening of the courthouse during COVID, interviewing and hiring the new public defender. So those are the qualities I bring to 40 years of experience, 30 of it as a public servant, and those leadership skills that are both proven and established within the judiciary. So I'm asking for your support as well.
Thank you. On behalf of the community, thank you both for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Our democracy thrives when all of us are engaged. Attending or watching a candidate forum is an excellent way to be empowered to join discussions on local issues and make your voices heard on Election Day. Additional information on how and when to vote can be found at illinoisvoterguide.org and the Central Kane County League of Women Voters website and social media. Recording of this forum can be found on the League of Women Voters of Central Kane County website and Batavia Access Television. And we're now going to take a break for a few minutes until the other candidates arrive. Thank you. What? Oh, okay. Press the green button.
We'll turn it on.
Just turn it back on with the green button.
Okay.
Because you're on. The goal of the League of Women Voters is to hold forums in contested races so voters can make an informed choice. All candidates for the Illinois House of Representative District 49 were invited to participate in a forum tonight. We believe it's important to offer every candidate the opportunity to share their vision with the community. We are disappointed that Republican candidate Hannah Billingsley has declined the invitation to participate. Therefore, per the policy of the League of Women Voters, we are providing Democrat candidate Maura Hirschauer 3 minutes to speak so you can hear directly from her, her goals, and her platform.
Thank you. My name is Maura Hirschauer, and I am your current state representative of the 49th District. It's an honor to serve you all, and it is a privilege to ask for your vote in re-election. As a voter myself, and someone who has worked in my community for positive change long before running for office, I think it is sad to see that my opponent has decided against meeting her voters and against explaining her agenda. Voters need to be able to ask questions and get direct answers about where their officials stand. That is why I accepted this invitation to be here, and I am disappointed that my opponent did not. And now let me tell you a little bit about myself. Before serving the public and state government, I served my community as a board member of a local nonprofit organization. I was a teacher for many years, which informs the work I do on education policy, especially in the space of early childhood. As a working mom, I know how to run an efficient household budget, and I hold our state budget to those same strict standards. Accountability and transparency are important. Throughout my tenure as a state representative, I have stayed connected to our community through continuous door knocking, town halls, and monthly community advisory committee meetings that convene on all sorts of issues: senior issues, education, mental health, the environment, and veteran services. These folks keep us humble, they drive policy for us, and they really help us be good leaders in Springfield. I am rooted in this community, and I spend each day talking and listening to voters at their front doors. I know that the economy is weighing heavily on folks. That is why I worked to extend the child tax credit, eliminate the grocery tax, and why I will continue to fight for working families. Every day, I speak with seniors who are struggling to make ends meet on their fixed budget. That's why I will fight for property tax reform and to improve the qualifications for our senior property tax exemption. As a mother, I have not yet finished the job that I came to Springfield to do, to make our schools and communities safer for our children. There is so much more work to be done to address the gun violence epidemic. When I am reelected, I will deliver on a comprehensive safe firearm storage law and critical changes to keep survivors of domestic violence and their families safe. We must pass Karina's bill and ensure that law enforcement has the support they need to take guns away from abusers while serving orders of protection. I am running for re-election so that my children and yours can thrive. I run for their ability to make their own personal health care decisions, to ensure a clean and healthy planet for their future, and to keep their communities and schools free from gun violence. I am proud of the work we have done together, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. Once again, the goal of the League of Women Voters is to hold forums in contested races so voters can make informed decisions. All candidates for the Illinois Senate District 25 were invited to participate in a forum tonight. We believe it is important to offer every candidate the opportunity to share their vision for the community. We are disappointed that Republican candidate Heather Brown has declined the invitation to participate. Therefore, per the policy of the League of Women Voters, we are providing Democrat candidate Karina Villa 3 minutes to speak so you can hear directly from her, her goals, and her platform.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters and for all of you who are here today to hear this discussion. For those of you who don't know me, I am Karina Villa, and I'm the Illinois State Senator of the 25th Senate District. More importantly, Before that, I was a school social worker for 15 years. Part of the reason why I decided to run was because I saw day in and day out the issues that were impacting the families that I was working with. These issues spanned from access to healthcare, mental health services, wanting Springfield to be there in an ethical way representing people. These were issues that I saw every day as a school social worker and decided to run for office because I believed that my community was not receiving the representation that they deserved. So when I got to Springfield, I got straight to work, immediately working on passing legislation with ethics reform. I fought to rein in corruption by passing legislation that stops legislators from becoming lobbyists when they leave office, putting an end to shadow lobbying, and gave greater power to the Inspector General to investigate corruption because our state deserves better. In regards to healthcare, I believe that access to quality healthcare is a right that everyone deserves. We've passed legislation that improves the quality of health insurance, increases access to mental health care, and cracks down on price gouging for certain prescription drugs. Illinois is also a place that will always trust women to make their own healthcare decisions. And because of that, we passed legislation that protects the right to choose. As a former social worker, I know how hard educators work to ensure that every child is given a world-class education. As a state senator, I have supported legislation that brings funding to our district schools. I've made sure that we improve support for early childhood education, and I've secured millions of dollars for apprenticeship programs to ensure that more young people can receive the support needed to learn from a trade that will set them up for success. Housing is one of the most important issues to the people who live in the 25th Senate District. We know that housing insecurity is a major concern for all Illinoisans. We've gotten to work by strengthening tenant protections to ensure that everyone has a quality place to rest their heads and created better incentives for developers to build more affordable housing. In regards to fiscal responsibility, we made sure to pass balanced budgets every year since I was elected to office. Thank you so much. I see a stop sign, so I will respect that time. Thank you.
Thank you both for taking the time to being with us here tonight. Please join me. We had planned on hearing from candidate Jerry Evans, who's running for the Congressional District 11 this evening to make a 3-minute statement. But unfortunately, we're unable to contact him to see if he's still planning to attend. So we'll move on with our agenda, and should he come at a later time, we'll hear from him then. So now I'd like to introduce Benjamin Herther. Oh, Haberther. I'm so sorry, Ben. Is he here? Okay. Ben is the executive director of the Kane County Forest Preserve District and is here to talk about a referendum question that will be on the ballot November 5th. Thank you, Ben.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's probably appropriate that I think we're the last item of the evening. Just point that out because we're also the last item on your ballot. So you'll see that on November 5th. But my name is Ben Habither. I'm the Executive Director. I've held that position for 2 years. I've been with the Forest Preserve District for 14 years, and I'm happy to tell you more about what's on the ballot here. I also want to thank the League for the opportunity to speak about this, Mayor Schelke for hosting the event, and Senator Villa and Representative Hirschauer have also supported a lot of Forest Preserve District efforts. So the Forest Preserve District was actually started by the King County Federation of Women's Club, which I thought was pertinent for this evening. That was almost exactly 100 years ago. We'll be celebrating our centennial on June 8th at Johnson's Mound, which is the very first forest preserve, so we'll be taking that there. You can see our mission up here. I won't read it to you, but know that our 3 pillars are conservation, environmental education, and recreation. And just like the League of Women Voters, we are apolitical. We believe nature is for everybody, and so it's a place where everybody can enjoy nature. As part of that mission, a lot of what we do helps to clean the air, improve water quality, especially right here in the Fox River Valley, and ups quality of life for everybody in the county. We do all that for just 1.5% of your property taxes. I like to point this out because often you'll see the Forest Preserve District in with park districts, which takes it over 5%, but we're actually less than 2 cents on the dollar. And that stays this way with this referendum. So why a referendum now? I'll show you a little bit of history. Well, I'll show you about 100 years of history in the Forest Preserve, but quite quickly. So we started in 1925, but all the way up through 1938, we only had 4 forest preserves. That was due to the Great Depression. And for the first 75 years of the existence of the Forest Preserve, the only way the Forest Preserve District grew was through non-referendum bonding. So what that looked like from 1938 to 1999 was less than 7,000 acres, which is a small percentage of the county in 75 years. In 1999, Forest Preserve District President Hoscheit with Executive Director Dewar started our first bond referendums, which started to show much quicker growth across the Forest Preserve District. So after our first 2 referendum, 99 and 2005, we had grown over 12,000 acres. In 2007, there was another referendum that brought on an additional 6,000 acres. 2011 referendum took the Forest Preserve District up to over 20,000 acres. And as of today, we're finishing up the 2017 bond referendum and just shy of 24,000 acres across the whole county. So what that has meant is a much larger increase in the holdings of the Forest Preserve District without an equivalent rise in staff or the operation ability for the maintenance of those. So that kind of lends some urgency to the question at hand now. This is what the ballot question is going to look like. Again, I'm definitely not going to read this to you, but I will mention I've already done my early voting, and if you're voting at the county, it's a long question, so it gets broken up. And like I mentioned, this question will be after the judges on your ballot. Just sticking to the facts here, we have a much larger version of this, but the takeaway for this land acquisition preserve improvement referendum, different than the bond referendum, you're looking at $10 per $100,000 of your home value. So we put a sample in here to help understand what the question is. So if you assume the average home price is about $290,000 in King County. So for ease of math, consider a $300,000 home. You're looking at $30 per year for 2024. Those bond referenda that I mentioned will be retiring throughout 2025 and 2027. So whether or not this referendum passes, the Forest Preserve section of your property taxes will be going down. This is what it looks like if the referendum were to pass. So we just have a couple case studies on here on what you can expect from the Forest Preserve District should this referendum pass. Like I mentioned, we do recreation, conservation, environmental education, so I have a couple examples of each of those. This first one is all the way up in the north part of the county, Rutland Township. At the very top of your screen there, you'll see a wetland indicated. That's Rutland Bog. It's the only intact bog in Kane County. A full 1 out of every 5 species are considered endangered and threatened. It's long been recognized as a high-quality natural area, and we were able to protect it in 2018 after the successful passage of the 2017 referendum. We'd now like to get that open up to the public, and you can see recreational trails, picnic shelters, restrooms. That's the type of development we talk about at the Forest Preserve District. So this is a project that will be ready to go, just waiting for the grant match. This is another project to the north part of the county. This is Plato Township. Some of you may have heard of the Muirhead Springs Forest Preserve, where we've done a successful wetland mitigation bank. It's been the biggest and largest wetland restoration in our history, and indeed in the county. And we'd also like to bring people to see this. So we're looking at an ADA accessible, multi-tiered structure, which really typifies the type of passive recreation for everybody in Kane County. You'll notice on the left, I wanted to include this picture. So this is federally threatened endangered whooping cranes. It's just a point of pride. Those were right there at Muirhead Springs. There's only 700 of these left in the world. Only 500 still migrate, and 3 of them landed in Kane County 8 months after this restoration began. You also may have heard that we're getting very close to having bison in the forest preserves. May not be this fall, but in 2025, we already have the pen structure built in Burlington Forest Preserve. And so we're working with multiple partners to make sure that all memorandums of understanding are airtight and moving forward. But we would like to expand that from the original, from the first 35-acre paddock, and really turn this into a wildlife reintroduction program rather than just a closed pen type of structure. So these would be native bison on native prairie. And finally, just one of the examples that we'd like to do to expand our environmental education offerings. This would be in Aurora at Arlene Shoemaker Forest Preserve. We've done some initial planning on an urban ecology field station. So this wouldn't be manned all of the time, but it would be available to our naturalists as well as local educators for getting children kind of off the devices and into nature. And it's one that we think would be outstanding. So I think that's about as quick as I've mentioned the facts on this. You can find out more just right outside where we have some fact-based information, but you also see the website here. And joining me tonight is our Director of Community Engagement, as well as our Director of Finance for any more questions this evening. But thank you once again.
Thank you. We do have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Would any of these projects require the hiring of additional personnel for the Forest Preserve District?
Yes, that's a good question. So specifically the bison project, we're looking at bringing in some part-time staff, regardless of whether or not the referendum passes, because we've already started the first phase on that. But we would have some expansion, but all of the projects I showed you tonight are more grant dependent than staff dependent.
The second question is, how will the referendum help people's ability to explore the preserves and utilize them?
Great question. Yes, so specifically the accessibility projects that we put in here. So a lot of the forest preserves, we intend to have a small footprint on there, but we'd also like to get people in there as much as possible. So we want to have accessible paths everywhere we can. So it's a combination of limestone paths and mowed paths, and this is just a sort of development project. We leverage local dollars to bring in state and federal dollars. So some of the biggest grants that we use from the state are open space land and development grants, what's called an OSLAD grant, as well as land and water conservation funds. So those are both approximately $800,000 to $1 million per year. So we need to have money in our land acquisition funds to have as match so we can bring those dollars to Kane County. A full 1/5 of the acres in the forest preserve system were leveraged that way, and so we'd like to continue to do that.
So just to clarify, so you still will be able to get those grants because you need you need the referendum to get those grants.
So right now, there are no land acquisition dollars in the Forest Preserve District Fund. So there is no match available right now. So that's part of the need for a referendum right now.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure you'll be around to answer questions for those in the audience. So thank you. And that concludes our program for this evening. Thank you so much for attending and for watching. Good night.